Are we ready to start?
I think we're ready.
We are ready. Okay. Welcome everybody to our last event that we're having for our Read Through the Valley book project this year. We're going to have one more event next month in April. Today we have Coach Brad Smiley, who is going to talk about the changes in the football uniform that we've seen through the years. If you read the book that we have as the focus of our project this year, Read Through the Valley project, 12 Mighty Orphans, the book talks about a little football team that belonged to an orphanage. They went to an orphanage. Well, we learned a little bit about their uniforms that they had and what they didn't have, and when you compare those to what the guys wore today, there's a tremendous difference, and so Coach Smiley is going to talk about that. Coach Smiley has talked with us before, and let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's a head coach and athletic director here at TVCC. He got a bachelor's degree from Baylor University, a master's degree from the Northwestern State University of Louisiana. And we are really happy to have him back again today. And please welcome Coach Smiley.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to kind of, if you don't mind, because I'm being critiqued, I would like to run this kind of like I run my meetings anyway. So if you don't have any type of media equipment, I'd like for you to move up, because a lot of you act like we're in church. I'm not going to call anybody out, so we don't need to sit in the back row. Now, if you have visual aspects or reason why you need to sit far away, that's fine. But this keeps me from yelling. We are in our day 3. Our 3rd spring ball practices today, so I need to save as much of my voice as I can, because I do have other people to yell at. There you go, perfect. Settle in.
Yeah, well, David said he couldn't be busy at practice. I said, sure, he wants you to come to
I just left him. He's in the parking lot getting warmed up. Perfect. We good? Awesome. Listen, they wanted me to talk about basically the changes throughout the year, especially from the book and when it was written, but actually we'll go even further back than that. But I do know why most of us are here. When you heard, and it's my fault for the low attendance, I told everybody there was a cover charge. So it's my fault. I apologize. Next time I'll tell them it's free. But I really wasn't looking for a huge audience anyway. So anyway, the football uniform, why you're really all here. I get it. I understand. You want to talk about the jock strap. Ladies, the mystery of the jock strap. I get it, ladies. You've been wanting to know for years, what is the deal with that, right? Some of us, is it an eye patch? Is it an ear cover? I don't know. I remember 7th grade and they handed it to us. I thought it was like the wrestling things that cover your ears.
I heard that these came out about 100 years before the helmet.
No question. No question. It is actually. We'll cover that. This was just kind of a joke. I'm really not going to cover the jock strap. So. This was about the most non-pornographic picture of a jock strap I could find. I was so glad this came out with an Eddie Haskell looking guy, because the rest of it would have been really strange looking. Really, when you start talking about the football uniforms didn't even come to be until about 1877, when you saw the first college football game, Princeton versus Rutgers, was in 1869. So it's been a long time, but it wasn't until obviously 8 years later, doing the math, that they actually standardized and used the uniforms. Obviously it started up there in the New England area, Princeton and Rutgers, and then Yale and Harvard. These were the students that got together that really started forming that game. And I covered that in my football coaching class, a little bit more of the history of the game, and I'll just kind of brush over it real quick with this. But really the first football uniform in 1877, it consisted, before they just kind of wore clothes and just matched whatever, it wasn't anything uniformed, but it consisted of a tightly laced canvas jacket, beads down it, that's it. They had stockings and a jersey, and they had trimmed in orange. Obviously this was Princeton with the orange, okay? And then it didn't have knee pads, shoulder pads, thigh pads, all these things that we use today. It didn't have a helmet, okay? These innovations obviously would be coming later. This is actually a picture of one of the first ones that Auburn had used in the late 1800s. If you see the beaded jacket here, the beaded canvas jacket, and they actually had some padded looking pants along with the stockings, but still no real protection. This was just really a signified we're on the same team, but it didn't. What the uniform provides today is protection. I mean, that's what it's all built around. Everything about the uniform today is about protecting the body, especially I mean, we go on and on and on. You hear more stories and more stories year after year after year about the difficulties with concussions and the injuries suffered, and obviously the NFL pensions, why it's so high, because of the insurances that they have to pay these guys. They need, you know, all this medical attention later on in life. This is a Yale team picture from the 1880s. So finally in their uniforms. This is one of the first leather helmets that were used. And George Barclay, Lafayette College, he's credited for the innovation of the invention of the leather helmet in 1896. So we did have the uniforms, the jackets, the pants, with no padding, of course, and then the helmet came along in 1890. But as you notice right here, they invented it in 1896, but it wasn't until almost 40 years later that the NCAA mandated that they actually wear a helmet. Because I guess, I mean, looking at that helmet, it doesn't look like it provides a whole bunch of protection anyway. So, I mean, that's to me was the stunning part. It wasn't until 1940 almost when college football had been played since the 1870s. So, this, any college football buffs, I just thought this was kind of a neat shot. Anybody, that's Michigan, right? That's the Michigan, that's the Wolverine helmet, same one they use today, with the design of it. So they've kept it throughout the years, even though now we're using the hard plastic shells and all the composites and the materials and the extremely strong whatevers, titanium bars and this kind of stuff that we use today. But I just thought that was a pretty neat shot. John Rydell, which those of you who've ever been around the game know, Rydell helmets has obviously is big. Right now there's Schutt and there's Rydell. We're a Schutt team, that's all we use. But there's some teams that are just Rydell. Those are the two big ones, okay? Bike makes a helmet. There's really about 3 companies that everyone uses. But Rydell was named for John Rydell and his son Rydell Jr. They were the ones that credited with designing the first plastic helmet. Obviously, much more protective. They have a chin strap to hold it on. We had the face masks come in, so now we're doing a little bit more protection of the face. Some of the new rules just happened last week, and the NFL just passed a new rule where the running back or a ball carrier in the open field is not allowed to lower their helmet anymore to run someone over. You know, again, it's you know, to help prevent concussions and things. And of course, that's the big talk, because everybody's thinking, how are we going to stop that? Because every running back or whoever, you're going to protect yourself and try to run somebody over. So anyway, but you know, with this and the plastic helmets, this is when we start getting into the composite materials that we use today. They're just safer and safer and safer. And what's funny is I hear my guys are complaining about a helmet. When I first took over as head coach 6 years ago, we had these, my players would call them concussion helmet. It was like not the newest models, and they would call it a concussion helmet. But, you know, it's so much better than what's ever had before, been used before, what I've used or whatever. What, you know, anybody in this room has used, other than maybe the Lions, and that's about it. You know, because as we go through time, the equipment's just gotten that much better, that much more protective. So anyway, this was actually an ad from the Rydell helmet, the Rydell Standard. That's what they called it. And obviously, just I thought it was a neat advertisement finding for it. So, and throughout time, really, they came in the 40s, and we saw the leather helmets. But when these plastic helmets start to come along, here's 1960s. This was your Notre Dame helmet in the 60s. I grew up a huge Notre Dame fan. One of the biggest reasons why I got into coaching. I grew up watching Notre Dame Saturdays on NBC with Lou Holtz and the Fighting Irish, and just a great history of that program from Newt Rockney and R. Persesian and Dan Leahy, all these guys. That's what got me being a real big fan. So Notre Dame in the 60s, then I know we're in Texas, so you got to put up the horns. In 67, the Miami, the U, as they start coming out in the 70s, you can start seeing the evolution of the helmet, more rounded, more protected, a little bit wider around the crown of the top, where it's just a lot more cushioning. Now it's to the point where the helmet doesn't even really almost touch your head. It's almost all air in there and padding, and everything in it is built with air. Your Florida helmet in the 90s, I know there's some Aggies running around here somewhere, so I had to throw the Aggies. Here's the Irish from the 12 with the clover, and of course I'm a Baylor grad, so I had to put the Baylor helmet on there. And notice it is a little bigger than everybody else's, because Baylor's just a little bit bigger and better than everybody else. So anyway, these days the players, you know, the player numbers on jerseys were required in NCAA in 1916, which I kind of thought that was unique. It took, again, there 35 years before somebody would figure out, hey, we ought to put numbers on jerseys. And you know, as people are watching, they'll be able to identify who's who and those types of things. And then always on the front in 1916, and then of course 21 years later they went to the front and the back of the jersey. Shoulder pads, Raleigh's, they're the first one to come out with. And Whitley's Armor Clothing, that was the nickname of it. That's what they called it. They weren't called shoulder pads. It was called Whitley's Armor Clothing, and they were actually invented in 1902. Now, I know some of us got excited when we started talking about shoulder pads, but ladies, I'm not talking about the 80s. I'm not talking about 1980s fashion, okay? I'm talking about real shoulder pads, okay? I'm talking about protection. We're going to hit somebody. Said, we remember these? I remember this. Remember that hair? That was my wife in 9th grade. These were the shoulder pads as they start coming out in the 30s. We start looking at the 30s. Then what you'll notice with football equipment is when it started in the 20s, everything started out kind of small and got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then as you hit the 80s, the whole point was we need to find stuff that's smaller and smaller and smaller. Smaller and lighter, smaller and lighter. It's the way it is today, where it's so streamlined. I mean, everything wants to be streamlined and tight and as close fitting as you can get everything. So, I mean, these are them today. And again, and I'll pull these out. And I don't know what, I have my equipment guy pack this bag for me, so I don't really know what's in it. I kind of peeked. But just so I have some of this I can kind of show you in person. But as you see, they just kind of, here they are. And this is, you know, I was not born in the 50s. I was born in the 70s. But this is what I remembered using pads like this up until you got to, you know, junior high where they got a little bit bigger and looked a little bit more like what we're using today. So this was just, thought this was a neat shot of some guys, you know, from the team and stuff like this and how everything looked. Obviously some knee pads, thigh pads, you're starting to get some more protection. Still nothing up top. This is, and you got to talk about Oregon when you're talking about uniforms these days. Because there's nobody more on the cutting edge of uniforms than Oregon. It's unbelievable what they do. They don't wear the same uniform ever in the same game. Now I'm going to play a clip for you here in a little bit. It's a little story on them, if it's okay with you guys. And it's a really neat story on what they're doing these days. Of course, this was Oregon in the 20s, and this is Oregon today. Every single game, they wear a different uniform. Oregon is bought, right? Nike. Phil Knight is an Oregon grad. He bases out of Oregon, so that's his team. This is his team. So anything with Oregon, he makes sure he hooks them up. They're the first ones to get everything. So these are all their jerseys, dark on dark, dark with the light shoulders, and this, because I'm looking at, you know, uniforms today, actually. I need to get some things ordered. But just doing all the different things. This is of them today. It's even got to the point where Nike now has got their gloves to match, where you see that's a guy holding his glove, and that's the picture on the gloves when you put them together, what it does. It gives the Oregon O. A few years ago when Alabama won the national championship, when they did this, you would see the A. It would make the A for Alabama. Each of them had a half, and they put them together that made the A, and that's kind of where that got really big. So now all the teams have to have their, you know, not our teams, like the teams with lots of money. They have to have gloves and everything that matches and all this kind of stuff, so it's a pretty neat deal. But so this is kind of what it's gone to today. But this is a, there it is. This is a YouTube clip. This is from CBS this morning. I just want to play about 6.5 minutes, but it provides a little insight on the history of the uniform. It really covers a lot of what Oregon's doing this day, okay, today.
Oregon Ducks defeated the Wisconsin Badgers in last week's Rose Bowl. They looked less like football players and more like comic book superheroes, sporting mirrored special edition helmets that had never been worn before. Oh, wow! Look at that helmet! Can you believe that? In fact, the Ducks haven't worn the same exact uniform for 2 games in a row since 2004. Portland-based Nike has outfitted the Ducks since 1996. Todd Van Horn is the designer.
Again, we're getting lighter weight. We've got stretch panels through here. It's completely 360-degree materials, zone ventilation through a lot of this. So we're bringing out
the changes, he says, are all in the service of performance. Now, the duck wings are very functional.
That's the primary intent. It has a durability. You know, it protects from, you know, the hits from other helmets or chin straps or, you know, face guards that would actually nick the material itself. So it makes it stronger.
But this is about more than functionality. Who are you wearing? Who are you wearing tonight? This season alone, the Ducks wore 8 different jerseys, 6 pants, 5 helmets, 6 different shoes, and 4 sock colors. A staggering number of possible combinations.
Oregon over the last decade or so has really pioneered the idea that nothing is out of bounds. We can do anything, we can push the envelope, and that really what we stand for is constant change.
So that's become their tradition.
Yeah, exactly.
ESPN's Paul Lucas is founder of UniWatch.com. He says college football uniforms have been changing ever since colleges have played football. In the beginning, uniforms were made of wool and had long sleeves. And were the helmets cloth or leather? Or?
Well, first there were no helmets in the beginning. Some players used device that's strapped around their head. It's like a little shield that covered their nose area, and that was the first quote-unquote helmet or face mask or face guard.
As for why today's players wear their jerseys skin tight,
it's really about this hand-to-hand combat, and anything hand-to-hand, you don't want those hands to be grabbing anything.
It looks like it fits you really well.
Yeah.
No grab points for the opponents through here,
Right.
so I think you're game ready.
the Ducks have turned the gridiron into a catwalk, and other schools are following suit. Maryland's Terrapins were cheered and jeered when they debuted their Maryland Pride uniforms, taking the state's flag and wrapping the players in it.
The biggest thing is, people are talking about Maryland, and they're talking about the uniforms, and anytime anybody's talking about you, it's all good.
If you think these uniforms are a little too fashion-forward, don't tell Coach Randy Edsel. Would you ever think of sending the offensive line up to Fashion Week in New York?
With our uniforms? Oh, most definitely. They'd be the hit. Seeing them big guys walking out there with those uniforms, when we had our show here, the runway, those guys were a hit.
Yes, the Maryland players had a runway show featuring this season's collection. And this year, even tradition-bound Notre Dame succumbed to the pressure to flash up their look. We wondered if other squads should change up their look, so we brought in Barney's creative director, Simon Doonan, for some fashion advice. Modeling for us, Columbia University football players Nick and Mike. Simon, Nick is wearing Wyoming.
This feels very spring to me. Well, it's sharp, it's crisp, it's good on the runway, but most importantly, right, it's good on the football field.
And he had only kudos for Arizona State's Sun Devils.
I love it. The burgundy looks incredible on the field, with all that greens.
But when it came to Hawaii's Rainbow Warriors,
well, I have to say, I'm a little disappointed. Hawaii, one thinks of luau's and tiki and all that great iconography.
it seems like a little bit tiki there. Is that right? But you want more.
This is very subtle tiki. To me, subtle tiki is no tiki. I want my tiki full on. The sports job could also be printed a la grass skirt. Low above print, Now we're getting creative.
By now, you may be wondering, why does any of this matter? Paul Lucas says a uniform may tell you a lot about a team's heritage, but he doesn't think it has much to do with their success on the field.
You take a school like Nebraska, and they have one of the plainer-looking uniforms. They have a really plain helmet with the N on it, and they sell out every game. So obviously the uniforms aren't what's driving attendance there. It's their history, it's their heritage, it's their success. Nothing looks better on the field at the end of the game than having more points than your opponent.
A flashy uniform may not mean more points, but it does mean more dollars.
The biggest thing that has changed in terms of what drives it is that when you and I were kids, you couldn't go and buy a jersey. That market didn't exist. They hadn't figured out that someone would drop $200 for a polyester shirt. And now that they know people will do that, well, you already bought this year's jersey. Well, what if we change our jersey next year? You go buy another one. And so that's like the merchandising tail wags the on-field dog in a way that it wasn't necessary or even possible 30, 40 years ago.
And while the Oregon Ducks may be trendsetters and Rose Bowl champs, Maryland ended the season with 2 wins and 10 losses.
It's one thing to look like a clown and win, then you're a winner. If you look like a clown and lose, you're just a clown.
I thought it was pretty fun. Rather clever. But, I mean, really, big things for us, I'll just move that up. With ours, as far as our jerseys and things like that, I'm kind of more Nebraska, more Notre Dame as far as a traditionalist goes. But when you just look at the materials and the things with the stretch panels, all the inserts and the things that you have, because he's right. I mean, when you're talking about the game of football and everything, this is a game played with your hands, played with your feet, played with your eyes. So for me, any advantage that you can gain from someone, you're going to gain. If you can grab and pull and hold, you're going to. You know, that's the biggest thing, bless you. So for me, it's all about getting as tight as you want, as tight fitting as you can, tight along the shoulders. I mean, this is a medium, okay? I've got larges that I wouldn't even put on to save embarrassment on the way I look in a large jersey. Because seriously, these things are so tight. I mean, you know, you look like 10 pounds of trash in a 5-pound bag. So to try to avoid that, unless you're in great shape, you don't just wear these and walk around in them, okay? Because they are tight. As you see the inserts, how they're tapered in. And then the shoulders give you just enough room to get that shoulder pad in, and then it's tight up along here. Because anytime an offensive line, defensive line, they can grab cloth, they're going to grab cloth. And that's the biggest thing. We teach that. And the teaching of, we're going to grab cloth inside. We're going to, anything inside here, it's not holding. So, I mean, you're going to be able to grab cloth and stay inside your body chain. And defensive linemen, they want these things skin tight so offensive linemen can't get them, and defensive linemen, they want them, and vice versa. Offensive linemen want them skin tight so the defensive lineman can't grab them. So, we don't cheat, but there are teams. There's NFL guys out there. I've heard stories for a long time. I mean, you're like these NFL players that are looking for any advantage that they can get. I've always heard of, and you'll see the, yeah, get you some of that. Exactly. Now, this is a small, which I'd say probably 40% of my team wears these pants on game day. Because again, you want them as tight and as streamlined as you can. You want to be.
Get in those.
Exactly. Exactly.
The Spanx for football.
The Spanx of football. There's a great word for it. But yes, they are small. But that's what it is. You want everything's tight. It's compression. It's tight fitting. You don't want anything loose, anything hanging where they can grab it. And we tuck in the jerseys and do everything we can to keep people from grabbing a hold of it and getting an advantage from us.
Are those like comfortable on them?
Yeah. Oh well, they're so lightweight, breathable, and they stretch.
I also noticed the trend. Is there a trend going to kind of the onesie type jersey? I noticed some of the jerseys they were showing more of like they had the pants built in with it, at least I guess to keep it tucked in. Did you notice that? Some of the jerseys they were showing? It wasn't just
onesie?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm watching it from
They weren't, but no, they're not. This is what they are. It's a tucked in jersey, but everything's so tight.
No, some of them they had hanging in those videos showed like it was all one piece.
I think there was probably a pant hanging up underneath it,
Really?
maybe just to
Okay.
show
Okay.
that they go together.
Okay.
But no, there are no.
I
I would love to see that. Where, Paul, I need your help. Get my left leg in. Yeah, no, I don't think that would happen. But
40% of your guys
wear the smalls, correct.
Wow.
I'm saying when I buy game pants, it's the smalls and the mediums are the ones that fly off because they want them very extremely tight, as you see in there. The only thing you want to see is the pumps and the pads coming out, and that's it. It's all about being, and of course it starts at the NFL level. You know, those guys, right? I mean, NFL guys, these are like knee pads, okay? These are to protect your knees, right? You're playing football, you're going to run extremely fast, you're going to have another guy hit you, cut you, do everything he can to get you on the ground and hit you, so you figured you'd wear these. Guys in the NFL, they don't wear them. They don't wear them. They don't have to. They're not mandated by the NFL rules. Now, NFL uniform rules, they have to wear the pants, the socks, they have to be tucked in, nothing showing. But they have no rules on thigh pads, knee pads. These things keep you safe. Makes no sense to me. Because I have guys that want to do the same thing. They don't want to wear them, or they want to take these and just cut them into a tiny little piece where they're legal. Okay? Because we have rules, you have to wear them in college football. And then the thigh, so what we had to do is end up tricking. I think I got a girl in here, because these days, because it's the same thing with thigh pads, they don't want to wear them. Well, these days, they don't wear jock straps anymore because everything comes in a girdle, which is funny to hear talking about guys wearing girdles, but these have built-in pads already that are sewn in. So when I first took over, I had to deal with a girdle. I had to deal with 2 hip pads, a tail pad, 2 thigh pads, and 2 knee pads. There were pads laying everywhere, always, and they always forgot them. And then when you're in a away game, and so the managers having to go find knee pads for this guy, and thigh pads for this guy, and this, and this. So other than knee now, everything's built in one. It's one performance, lightweight, stretch girdle that's washable. Everybody wears these. It's got your sewn-in hip pads, your tail pad, and your thigh pad, so you're protected, taking shots. Now I'll have running backs, linebackers, if we're going to take a lot of contact. Sometimes you feel like with this isn't enough. In our pants, they have pockets anyway. As you see the pocket for a thigh guard right there. As you look in there, you can slide in an extra set of thigh guards for more protection. Especially if a guy's got deep thigh bruises, contusions, or anything, you need to pad him up, protect it a little bit more to take some hits off of them. So, but it's just changed so much. And from the NFL, it doesn't help with the NFL and the way those guys are, and it's their career, it's their livelihood. That's the way I look at it. They are basically their own entity. They're their own corporation, so they can do what they want. But for whatever reason, most of them don't feel like they need to protect themselves in that way. The helmets these days, I talked about the shut air. Now what the helmet's gone to, obviously very lightweight. A helmet like this, a big bucket like this. When I was coming up, a large helmet, these things weighed 15 pounds, and now they're about 3 pounds maybe, and that's it. The whole insert, everything in there is built off of air. Everything in there is just air and padding. Yes, ma'am.
What does it cost to outfit a football player?
A helmet, these helmets run, the shut air is $190 for a helmet. Exactly. That's why we don't get new helmets every year. Basically, we budget wisely. Basically, what I tried to do when I first came in to get out of the other helmet was start purchasing 20 to 25 of the shut air each year, the DNA, the DNA, which is now the old helmet. Now there's a new one out there. The guy comes in and shows me today, and I'm like, forget it. I've gotten myself finally to 100 DNAs because I was just about 20 or 25 a year, and then recycle out, cycle out, cycle out, and then of course you need to recondition them. You have to get them cleaned. You need to recondition them. You need to get the buckles and things fixed. But this is something you really don't skimp on, obviously, because when you're putting kids, they're out there on the field, or you got a chance to get somebody seriously injured if they're not properly outfitted. We spend a lot of time. Everything in here is built off of air. So, like today's practice, our third day, the first time we're going to actually hit each other. We've been in shorts and helmets for the first 2 days, so today we'll actually have contact. So today, now it's the big preach. Make sure we got a mouthpiece in. Make sure a lot of people think mouthpieces are for teeth. Mouthpieces are for concussions. That's what they're to stop the rattling of the teeth when you get hit and hold them together. But if you see, there's a bladder in here and there's a hole at the top that our trainers and equipment staff have air pumps, and you just pump it in and it just airs up and compresses around the head. So that way you don't have the hard plastic on your skull anymore like you used to, which is where a lot of the big collisions happen and how it happens. So, but these come with, there's about 8 different styles of face masks that you can get for different positions. It's usually position specific as far as what they want, things like that. So,
But an entire uniform, like you could outfit one guy, could you outfit a guy for $1,000?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, 190. I get these because if I get it ahead of time, they give me a deal. So $66 for a jersey. And what I did different than anybody's ever done here before, I went ahead and talked Ron Ball into just, when I first got here, come on Ron, let's go get 2 new sets of jerseys 1 year. Because Mark had changed it up and he went to red helmets, and Trinity Valley won national championships with white helmets and red face masks. We don't need to be red helmets with red face masks. That didn't make any sense. So that was one of my deals. That was one of my deals that if I was going to take the head job. So and then what I do is I buy, basically these are it's a modified stock jersey that Nike makes. Now everything that you see in Division I, they're all getting custom jerseys. Those are $300 a piece in what they're doing. But I get a custom stock, which means, or modified stock, which means they're stock, they have it in stock, but you modify it by, you can change what you want the collar or this. If you want embroidery right here, 1 inch, 3 inch, do you want tackle twill jerseys, which this is a tackle twill, it's not a screen print. These days, with the new jerseys I was looking at today, they now have some lightweight stretch twill. It almost seems like a screen, but it has the durability of the twill. So I buy these just so each year I just have to fill in, okay, you know, number 10's ripped to shreds, number 12, number 42. So I would fill in with about 10 jerseys a year. Saves me a huge cost. Because before, most people rotated to buy a brand new set every year, where a brand new set, you're talking about $5,000 for a set of jerseys. That's expensive. So to me, I just save the cost and buy the stock and the custom stock. So, and just kind of keep a traditional Trinity Valley look and not get too carried away or too crazy with it. So you're talking about $60 here, you're talking about $40 here. So $100 right here, $190. So you're looking at $290, $21.75 right here. These are next to nothing, a couple bucks these days. Shoulder pads, you're looking at $100 a piece. Same thing on the shoulder pads. These are probably a year or 2 years old. I use them obviously as we take care of them as soon as the season's over. We tag them to who they were if they're a returning player, put them on the racks. We spray them down with steraphin just to get, you know, infections or anything like that, bacteria infections or what am I looking for? Staph, right? Because we know those usually run rampant throughout, you know, collegiate sports and locker rooms and stuff like that. We've been very fortunate to, you know, we really haven't had an issue. We've had 1 or 2 guys a year with a spot, and that's about it. So they can come from anywhere.
What's the inside of that one?
Northwest Hall. Or Northwest Penitentiary, I call it.
Yes.
What's that?
I was saying the inside of that, is that foam?
Yes, this is a foam padding. That's what I'm saying. With those before, it was just, you know, there was just pattern with some leather on the outside. Now it's just made with plastics. I mean, these things are lighter than anything I've ever used.
That's very light.
Exactly, and that's the key. I mean, you got 300-pound guys running around out there. You don't want to be weighed down with a set of shoulder pads. Anybody else? I mean, y'all come up here and handle whatever you want to handle, except for me. We'll get back to the cover charts. But just, it's plastics, it's lightweight, it's the foam padding, that's what I'm saying. Everything is about just getting lighter. And the way shoulder pads work these days, these don't even sit on your shoulders. I mean, if they're done right, if you'll watch kind of when you put them on and you strap up, as soon as you strap these things up with the elastic straps, it actually pulls the shoulder pad up off your shoulder so it stays about right here. So you're not taking brunt contact, you're getting the contact secondhand through something that's already got a shock absorber in there for you. So I mean, I know that, I'm sure that Bike and Shutt and Douglas, they spend so much money each year on you know, just experimenting and messing with game cleats, 63. Everything that we get, none of you can touch our prices. I mean, we get basically 35% off of everything if it's Nike. We get 35% off of everything, and then we have certain deals where they kick in. When I do recertify my helmets and recondition them, have them repainted, redone, for every 10 that I recondition, they give you a free helmet, so you can use those to kind of build up your supply as well. But then we got belts, which I don't buy the fancy cloth belts. I buy these that are $1.50. You can buy those others at $8, not worth it.
Where did those go? The belts? To keep those little things up.
So they can't.
So you can't even see it.
I see.
It's on the inside.
Okay.
Correct. So that way, if they do have to wear a large because you're out of smalls and mediums, because they don't make us medium, then sometimes that guy, that third stringer, is going to be in a large pair. Sorry, buddy. We do issue equipment by priority. Starters first. The better starters, all Americans and all conference at the front of the line. Yes, ma'am.
So how much time does it take to put all this on? Do you give them an hour, 2 hours before game time?
Well, like
they get it
before
down, I'm
practice,
sure, once they've been in high school football.
it shouldn't. I mean, honestly, I mean, we give them as much time as they need on game day, just trying to get things. But our regular day, which will usually start in the mornings, you know, whatever. Like this morning, we had position meetings at 6:30 a.m. They come in, we watch film. I cut them at 7:15 so they can go get breakfast, go to treatment, go to the training room. With the Alliance and his staff in there taking care of them, getting healthy. Then they have an 8 o'clock class. They got it. So they come. We probably get them then around. If they, let's say they get out at 12:05, the 10:50 is their last class. They get out at 12:05. They get to eat lunch. They'll probably hit the building around 12:45, because at 1:15 we start the first group of workouts. O-line, D-line had to be there to start their workouts. So they'll get their workouts and testing done now. We've already met in the morning, so we don't need to position meet again. So they've got, you know, they'll have about 15 minutes, but in the fall, I require them to come dressed and ready for all their meetings. So, I mean, you should already be taped. The Alliance and them, they're going to tape or wear ankle braces. If we have shoulder pads on, my rule is mandatory that they have their ankles taped or braced just for protection. If we have full pads on, if we have pants on, I make the offensive line wear knee braces just to protect those guys. But really, a guy should show up in his meeting, he should already be dressed in his workout gear, whatever we are that day. If it's full pads, he should already be dressed in his full pads. He should come to the meeting like this. There's no cleats in the building, and he should have his helmet pads right here with his jersey on. So, you know, if we're practicing at 3:15, we may not let you out of there until 3:05, and it's like, oh, 3:05, let's go, hit the ground, we'll be out there in 10 minutes. So they got enough time to just run in, use the restroom, and then put their shoulder pads on as they're running out the door.
So this is why girls don't play football.
They don't have enough time to get ready. Exactly. But this is when we travel for games, this is what goes with them. So this is what they have. And obviously they've got their own socks and all that, their own supply socks. So.
Well, with all that extra protection like the knee pads and the shoulder pads or whatever else you put on them, basically, do they come out of a game, at the end of the game, are they relatively safe? I mean, they relatively...
It just depends.
I mean,
honestly, it just depends. I mean, there's
and most of it works well,
right.
And you don't get a lot of major
Correct.
Injuries.
Correct. We've been very fortunate, but a lot of the major injuries, these won't stop. These won't stop a torn ACL. These aren't going to stop a guy tearing a labrum. There's no, you know, arm covers. You can break an arm pretty easily.
Yeah.
You know, whatever, broken leg, those types of things. I mean, this is to stop. Basically, this is to keep the bumps and bruises to a minimum. And that's what it is. I mean, it's football. There's a 100% chance you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you play the game long enough, you're going to get hurt. So, I mean, it's just a matter of what you can do to minimize the risk, what you can do to minimize the pain. They're all going to be bumps and bruises. When you're in that grind, they're all, I mean, you'll see, show up, give me 2 more weeks, and then y'all are more than welcome to come to practice, and then just kind of hang out by 5:30 when we're done, and watch these guys come out of the building, or just go hang out in the cafeteria and watch them go in. Right the line, some of them, I call them the icemen, they'll be packed, they'll be iced everywhere, all over their body, shoulders, elbows, legs, and then just, you know, I mean, they'll just pack them down in ice, basically, and you're just trying to reduce the bumps, the bruises, the pain that go along with it, the everyday stuff. So, I mean, that was kind of part of the last speech, why men play football. You know what I mean? That was the last thing. It was more of, you know, hey, sometimes it is worth the risk
Well,
to do
you've got a good therapist there, or
We have a
I don't know
great,
if
yes,
that's
we do.
that
Things have
helps.
changed so much in Trinity Valley alone. In our equipment, when I was here in 98, 99 with Scotty Conley, I came in on the heels of the 97 National Championship. And I was the equipment guy. I was the offensive line coach, tight ends coach, recruiting coordinator. Our receivers coach was horrible, so I coached receivers too. I was the equipment guy, did the laundry. I mean, in our equipment room, if you walked in, here's the door, there's the back wall, that was our equipment room. I mean, there wasn't hardly anything in there. I mean, the building that we have now is the Taj Mahal compared to where we were. Our offices were where the Lady Cards office is now, because football had that side of the gym. What our team meeting room was is now softball's locker room. What our locker room was is now the Lady Cards locker room. So 12 of them, 90 of us. You know, so it's just amazing what the space has been able to do. And just from the equipment side of things, the training side of things, in 98, 99, we had 2 student trainers. That's it. It was the Alliance at 19 taking care, and one other person his age taking care of an entire football team, entire basketball teams, and everything. That was it. And I spent 2 years in the back of my mind going, how are we not getting sued? This is unbelievable. And we had a contract through ETMC where they would only show up on game day. We had a doctor who would show up on game day, and then we had an orthopedic guy that would come by once a week. Well, it's Thursday, Lou's here. He would come in and check out anybody that thought they were really hurt. You know what I mean? So, you know, you look from day to day to where now our program is run more like the Division I style. In a Division I program, you're going to have treatment therapy every day, every morning for all the athletes that are going to be involved. They're going to be down there. So those of you that have people in the community that you know that call in and complain about the athletes walking down the street, they're hurt. That's why they're going that way, and that's why they walk so slow, because they're hurt. They're going to treatment at 7 in the morning. But you'd be amazed But believe me, the sheriff has called on several times saying, hey, can we get them to stop walking in the road and this and this and this, and that's why we got that gravel parking lot. So you give me a parking lot, they won't have to walk. So we got a parking lot out there, find that gravel lot back there so they can park there. You know, Max Logan, 3 years, first 3, I couldn't get him to put a sidewalk down the middle of that field. Thank God for Cardinal Hall. With cement trucks already out here, hey, we're going to pour a sidewalk. Yay! That way we don't have to walk in the road anymore. Now we're going to walk on a sidewalk.
That was pretty scary.
Yeah, because who would 7 in the
out
morning?
that direction, not dark, the football players.
Well, I mean, you guys are going to class, you're going to work, they're going to who wants to walk through a wet field at 7 in the morning?
Oh, no.
It gets soaking wet. So anyway, there's so many things that changed from that standpoint. Now we have a full-time athletic trainer, Troy Scott, that holds 2 degrees. We have 2 graduate assistant trainers that work through Azalea Orthopedic and contract through them that they give us. And then 3 years ago, we started a student athletic training program. So we never had one before. We just had to get lucky and find somebody that wanted to do it. But now we started a student athletic training program. Now we're usually 9 to 12 student trainers every semester that come in for us. So now we've got, each sport has got a full-time or a graduate assistant that's already been through, you know, the whole program somewhere else, and they're running their sports, and they're student trainers that will join them with those sports. So again, it's really never been better. And I know it's like it used to be still at some other programs in our conference and things, and I don't know how they get it done, but we're very blessed to have what we have. There's no question about that. And I know we probably saved a lot of money in lawsuits off of the way we now do our athletic training side of things. So, but really, you know, they do a great job. They take care of everybody. But this stuff, it's not going to stop the major stuff, but it is going to stop when you've got your bumps and bruises, your aches and pains. It's going to help with a lot of that. It's going to continue to help you from getting worse, especially if you're protected. But for some reason, you still have guys that go out there like those guys in the NFL without knee pads, without thigh guards in. They think it's going to slow them down. It's going to cost them $100,000 on their next contract because they're not as good. But again, that's their bodies and they can do what they want. But now you're starting to see all the stories of those guys post-career, and I guarantee you they all rethink those decisions, because now I just watched a story the other night in Dallas where Randy White, Tony Dorsett, and Darren Woodson are going through some experimental treatment at a surgeon, spine surgeon, you know, just helping out with the concussions, and they're sitting in this little booth and they spin them around and backwards and forward. It looks like an amusement park ride. It's like some of the Texas State Fair, but supposedly it's supposed to help with the vertigo, and they say they all feel better, but it's, you know, it's all experimental stuff. But they're willing to do whatever, as Tony Dorsett says, that, you know, hey, this is my life, this is my health, and I'm going to fight like heck to make sure that I do whatever I can to make me feel better. And right now it's working. It may have bad effects 2 years from now, who knows? But you know, he's feeling the effects for sure. But anyway, obviously, I mean, you can see there's been a ton of changes throughout, and just some unbelievable evolutions in the uniforms and the rules and the way we do things. And I know they make a lot of the rules they're there to protect the concussion rule, that what I talked about the other day, not the concussion, but talked about earlier with the lowering the head, with the crown of the helmet in the open field. That passed. Only one owner voted that down. It passed 32-1. That passed. Yet everybody in the country's been complaining about it. Every football player in the NFL is complaining about it. But it's there to protect them.
So what do you do? What's the alternative?
I guess stay up and try to shake the guy. It's just not going to allow you to just lower your head and truck the guy anymore.
Barrel.
Right, just barrel him over. That's all you can do. Yes, sir.
Have you noticed a trend with the newer design helmets? Have you noticed a trend of the concussions going down? Or does it kind of stay the same because guys are getting more aggressive, with the big face mask and the helmet's supposed to be the magical helmet?
I personally here, I feel like we've had a lot less concussions now than we did before. But a concussion is one of those things that it's tough to diagnose unless somebody says something. I mean, you've got those ball players that are just a war daddy mentality that, I've got guys that won't say they're hurt because they're afraid if they go in the training room, we're not going to play. You know what I mean? You have to just stay on them all the time. I mean, the lines know. I mean, there's guys that we know are hurting, and I'm asking them all the time. And you see something, and I'm good, unless they're checked out. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of times concussions go undiagnosed just because they don't want to sit. A couple of years ago, semifinals, when we beat Nevada in the regular season finale, we go to the playoffs. Well, Tucker just got a concussion on that last drive. you know, on a hit by a defensive lineman, and then next week we don't have Tucker. You know, so there's the conference player of the year, and he's out, and we go the next week and we lose, and guys see that type of stuff, and they're like, well, I don't want to have to miss out. You know, I really don't. And then a lot of it, I see less and less concussions from when I first started because of the teaching of the game now. They're finally putting a premium on the coaching at the youth levels. Because before, I mean, my first year here, T-ball, I mean, how that guy became a coach, I had no idea. So I immediately became an assistant coach to stop some things. But there's some things going on at the youth football level that if they're not being taught right and taught well, and they're taught to duck their head and, you know, do those types of things, I mean, it's just like any habit. I mean, these guys, they learn that. I mean, there's so many bad habits I have to break when I get them at this level. And if you got a guy who keeps ducking his head, you know, that's the, I mean, I go off on the guy because the biggest part of my speech going off on him is, it's not going to be on my head the rest of my life that you're a quadriplegic because you duck your head in football. You know what I mean? You've got to sky your eyes, and if you can't get your head up and your eyes up, we can't play. It's just not going to happen because you're going to get hurt. I mean, there's no question. You know, and some guys are going to lead. And I feel like you can play and play hard, and you can lead with your head and do some things like that if it's done well and done right. You'll be safe and you'll be fine because you're supposed to bow your neck and you pull your helmet into your shoulder pads and keep your eyes up, you're fine. You know what I mean? As you run through somebody. But when you do that, you've been exposed. And that's when you're inviting the injury and serious. I mean, you know, you're talking about paralyzation, you're talking about death. So, the concussion rate has gone down. There's no question. Even from when I was at Tulane University, a Division I university, I've seen it go down since then. Just big thing, the DNA helmet and the Rydell, I forget the name of it. What is it? The last, Rydell, the big one. It's the same as the DNA, but anyway, these helmets, when they came along, made a huge difference. Getting away from those old bladder helmets that, you know, yeah, they were concussion helmets. That's why I'm glad we're finally out of it. So, any other questions? We good?
Come on, look at all that. We want to thank you, Coach.
Yes, ma'am.
You're always